20 miles from New York, a pair of enormous eggs jut out into the most domesticated body of salt water in the Western Hemisphere, the Great Wet Barnyard of Long Island Sound.
I loved The Great Gatsby when I first read it a few years ago. It evoked this amazing world to me of Long Island's mansions and blue lawns, its champagne and stars. So I'm here now in Long Island to see how much of that spirit of Fitzgerald can still be traced in the area today.
The Great Gatsby's narrator, Nick Carraway, describes Long Island as one of the strangest communities in North America, and from my first impressions, I can relate to his sentiment. These aren't houses, they're fantasies, each conjuring up its own fairy tale. In the novel, Gatsby's mansion is described as a factual imitation of some Hôtel de Ville in Normandy, with a tower on one side, spanking new under a thin beard of raw ivy.
This is Beacon Towers, built in 1917 by the Vanderbilt family. Apparently Fitzgerald went to loads of parties at this place. It's an exact replica of an Irish castle, and apparently one of the places that Fitzgerald based Gatsby's mansion on. I mean, it must have been quite spectacular approaching from the sea. This tower would have just seemed like it was rising up out of the ocean. Amazing, elaborate castle. I just want to see now what's left of the place.
The ornamental turrets seem like they belong to a fantasy castle, but the fortified wall and signage don't make me feel very welcome. The generosity of spirit which marked Gatsby's parties seems to have evaporated in modern-day Long Island. But undaunted, I find a way onto the beach and reach the site of the castle that way.
It's quite humbling to think that only 60 years ago that mighty Beacon Towers stood right on this spot here, and now there's just nothing but sand.
The fairy tale castle haunts my imagination, and just like Nick in the novel, it's as if the gleaming, dazzling parties it witnessed were still with me. I could still hear the music and the laughter, faint and incessant, from the garden, and the cars going up and down the drive. I'm wondering what happened to Beacon Towers, who demolished it and why, and with its destruction, was the Gatsby spirit snuffed out? I seek answers from born and bred Long Islander Louisa Hargrave. For her, the island is more than the sum of its grand houses. It's a place she feels organically connected to.
I can feel the climate in my bones. I know, if it's going to rain or if it's going to snow or something, I can kind of tell. Because I grew up here.
Yeah. That's really
with the smell, like this frosty smell when it's going to snow, I know what that is.
I've been quizzing Louisa on whether Gatsby-esque parties are still thrown here, and she tells me about one put on by a French hostess.
So we're at this party, and I didn't have a watch. So she had this really beautiful gold watch on, and she took it off and she put it on my wrist saying, "Oh, you have to take this old thing. If I give it to you, my husband will get me a new one, and it'll be much thinner." And I stood there like, what do I do? I can't take this gold watch. So, I probably should have, but I just took it off. I said, "Anique, I can't take this gold watch." I gave it back to her, and she looked at me like it's really disgusted. Like, "You fool, why don't you take this watch?" So maybe I don't know how to behave at those places.
Louisa takes me to one of Long Island's oldest private member clubs. Here we meet her friend Jackie, who shows us around the historic clubhouse.
And this is unchanged, Simon, this whole...
So when does this building date from?
1891. Let's go up here and peek if this is a good angle, because this is the lunch spot for the club, and this also would have been unchanged. Great Gatsby would be a more likely story to have taken place in Southampton. The astounding wealth, the astounding mansions. I mean, they're here, but they're mostly for many of the families were Catholic in the 20s, 10s, 20s when these houses were built, and they are big because they had 12 children. But it's a different kind of big than Southampton big. Although I was walking this morning down that way, and there's quite a bit of Loire Valley going up. It was quite grand. Versailles, which in a way is too bad because it isn't big because of the family, it's big to be grand, and that's a bit unhappy. But it's still a very sacred place. I think utterly beautiful. To come here in the morning or the evening and throw a stick for your dog in the waves is just timeless, just a wonderful adventure.
As Jackie's words resonate and the ocean waves crash, I'm borne back to the Long Island Fitzgerald conjured up, and I'm reminded of Nick's words from the novel's closing chapter. I became aware of the old island here that flowered once for Dutch sailors' eyes, a fresh green breast of the new world. For a transitory and enchanted moment, man must have held his breath in the presence of this continent, face to face for the last time in history with something commensurate to his capacity for wonder.